Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast. This is Robert along with my co-host, Sports Radio 610, Shaun Bijani. And joining us to start the show is longtime friend of the show and Astros minor league guru, Jimmy Price. Go check out his work on astrosfuture.com or his Astros Future podcast. Great to have both you and Astros baseball officially back, Jimmy.
Yeah, no, it's been great. It's nice to have a couple spring training games in. I'm ready to see some more guys in action.
So, Jimmy, on Monday, Forrest Whitley gives up a couple of runs through 25 of his 34 pitches for strikes in his first spring training appearance against, I guess, a watered-down Miami Marlins lineup. But that leads me into the question all Astros fans are wondering, Jimmy, if Lance McCullers is out for a few months, you know, we know Forrest Whitley's one of the guys that we've talked about that could be a little bit of pitching depth, but who are some of the starting pitchers from our farm system who you think can help out or maybe even make the roster as a long reliever?
I think Brandon Bielak has got to be one of the guys. He's kind of quietly put up some good numbers in the majors when he's had the opportunity to have a spot starter and long relief. It'd be great if Forrest Whitley could stay healthy and he could kind of do what we expect him to do. But at this point, you know, I mean, it was nice to see him be out there today and he was healthy and the pitches were working. I know he gave up some hits and runs. At this point, it's just health early in the spring. Hopefully he'll get going. But yeah, Brandon Bielak seems to be one of the top favorites. Another guy they added to the roster in the offseason, to the 40-man roster, JP France, had some really good strikeout numbers. They ended up converting him into more of a reliever later in the season. But he's had some starting experience, so he could maybe be one of those guys that picks up a spot start, maybe pitches in long relief as well.
Jimmy, I'm curious. I kind of want to piggyback on Robert's question, in terms of the starting pitching depth. You mentioned JP France, obviously Forrest Whitley, Brandon Bielak. It just seems like over the years, guys like Christian Javier, Luis Garcia, Jose Urquidy, just to name a few, these guys kind of come out of nowhere. And the Astros have done such a great job of developing starting pitching, just pitching in general during this run, this dynasty that they're on over the course of the last 6 years. Are there any other kind of fringe guys that you have maybe paid attention to that have caught your eye, that they're not amongst the top 20 prospects in this system, but maybe we should kind of side-eye them a little bit?
In terms of guys that I think would contribute, right away, a lot of I think the unknown arms are going to be a little bit lower in the system. And there's quite a bit of them actually that are in that single A, maybe pushing into the high A range that are probably in that back 20 to 30 to 40 range in the system. But if we're looking at a guy that's maybe a little underknown by most fans that could probably have an impact this year, Misael Tamarez, he pitched all the way up to AAA last year. Has some issues with command, but he's a guy that runs it up to like 97, 98 pretty regularly. And maybe a guy that can make a step forward like a Luis Garcia or a Christian Javier when we saw them. Maybe not as explosive, but still extremely young. I think he's like 22, 23 years old. He'll probably be in AAA this year. Looking, like I said, a little further down the system, there is some definitely some unknown guys that could follow that Javier kind of role. Miguel Ulola is a high potential prospect. Edison Bautista is another one, really good breaking ball. The Astros just seem to do well of finding these unheralded pitching prospects and turning them into legitimate prospects and obviously MLB contributors.
Hey, I want to ask you about this catching situation because that's one of the real soap operas in camp, we know. And before I do that, let's remind everybody the best way to support us is subscribe and comment on YouTube. You can listen on the run by subscribing on your favorite podcast app. But Jimmy, you followed the minor league careers of Korey Lee and Yainer Diaz for the last few years. Who are you betting on to make the roster, and who do you bet on long-term between, kind of who's going to be the long-term answers between those two guys, you think?
Man, that's a really good one. I think they both bring something different to the table. I think if you're looking for more of the defensive option, Korey Lee might be your bet there. But I really believe in Yainer Diaz's bat. I think he's going to be able to be a big league contributor. He doesn't strike out. He has power to all fields. And he's doing it at such a young age. It's crazy. The Astros traded for him back in the 21 season at Miles Straw deal. And at the time, he was in single A. And now, not even a year and a half later, we're talking about him maybe making the opening day roster. So pretty crazy. So if I was a bet man, I'd like to bet on his bat. I think he's going to be able to contribute either at catcher, first base, DH, wherever they put him. I think he even got some reps in the outfield. But I do think Korey Lee seems like the better option maybe to be an immediate backup because, it seems like with your backup catcher, you want somebody that's going to be good defensively that can maybe give Maldonado some days off. So looking at the defensive side, I'd say Korey Lee. But in terms of the bat, I think Yainer Diaz is going to be special at the big league level.
Korey
Man,
kind
I'm
of struggled
glad.
a little bit. I just thought he didn't look that great last year when he had an opportunity defensively. Do you feel like he's just kind of nervous getting his start there? Or was there stuff that we just didn't see that first few weeks that he got a chance?
Yeah, I think it's hard to judge a guy off of a few weeks in the majors. I mean, we do it at the plate all the time. We give guys breaks at the plate. I think defensively is the same way. But just looking at what they can contribute defensively, and I don't want to take anything away from Yainer Diaz. I think he can still improve. Like I said, he was just in Single A year and a half ago. But I think Korey Lee has a chance to be the better defender at the major league level. But both of the guys, neither one of them rank in like the top 100 prospects for Fangraphs MLB. But I think both of them could honestly together could make a nice catching tandem in the future.
I was just going to say, man, I was glad to hear your opinion, your take on Yainer Diaz. I really, really like him. And my hopes are pretty high for him as well for a lot of the same reasons. Obviously, the defense, you never know. But, I mean, that's what spring training is for. And that's the benefit of having a guy like Maldonado, as your starter, as, one of your captains and leaders on the team, so to speak. I'm kind of curious on your take, Jimmy, about one of the more underrated, things that maybe people aren't talking about with this Astros ball club. And it kind of ties into the catching position for me because I get caught up too. And I want to talk about the competition between Korey Lee and Yainer Diaz, things like that. But how important do you think it is to have another veteran catcher on this roster? Do you feel like that's something that, Dana Brown, their new GM, might explore during the course of the season if, in fact, Martin Maldonado continues his struggles, maybe he doesn't stay healthy? How do you see that position behind him?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like last year the Astros were content rolling with Maldonado despite his lack of offensive production. I know they went and got Christian Vasquez at the deadline, and then we got to see him play a little bit, but they really went back to Maldi pretty much every time in the playoffs, and that was kind of their rock. And it was kind of seemed like they realized if the top 7 or 8 was hitting, that you could do with Maldonado not doing a ton at the bottom of the lineup. In terms of adding another veteran catcher, I think this is the perfect opportunity to give a guy like Korey Lee a shot, or Yainer Diaz even at the backup option. He can catch a couple times, a few times a month. Give Maldonado some days off. Maybe provide something special with the bat. But he's also got some chemistry with some of these guys. They've been through the system together. He's obviously been in the system since 2019 when he was a first-round draft pick. But I kind of feel like, rather than go out and sign the veteran catcher, you're never going to know what you have until you can kind of let these guys get an opportunity. And this seems like a good opportunity to let them get an extended stay at the major league level, getting some backup reps, getting some pinch hits, and then get some spot starts whenever you can get a chance.
Jimmy, I thought maybe Pedro Leon could push for an outfield spot, but the injuries killed his chance. So without Leon, which surprise outfield candidate maybe could emerge if Jake Meyers doesn't step it up in camp?
It feels like I'm cheating saying this after the last 2 games, but Justin Dearden was a guy that I kind of had pegged, going into camp, just because, what he did last year at the AA, AAA level, undrafted free agent following that COVID draft, probably would have been selected in the top 10 rounds if it wasn't for a 5-round draft. But just a really good left-handed bat. I mean, you see the power to all fields. You saw the home run to left center. You saw him pull one today. Really good hitter. Doesn't strike out a ton. He draws walks. Kind of sneaky good athlete. I think he can handle center field. So, like I said, I feel like I'm cheating giving that one based on the last couple of games. He's 3 for 3 so far in spring training. But he seems like one of the guys that if there is an injury or something and we need somebody to step up, somebody added to the 40-man roster, he would be there. One other guy, Corey Julks. We saw him play today. Play a little bit of third base, a little bit of outfield, has some pop. University of Houston, collegiate level player. But he's another guy I think could get a chance. Maybe if Jake Meyers doesn't get that role. It seems like the Astros are still maybe content with that Myers-McCormick battle going on right now. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out this spring, but I do think they have a couple decent options at the AAA level if needed.
Is Metajevic kind of the guy then as far as making the roster, especially because he's got that first base ability to, play defense over there?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't think, I think he's more of it's weird. He played second base in college. He's a big guy, but I think he's more of like a first base DH guy. I'm not sure if you're going to want to play him in the outfield. So that may lead them to favor a guy like Jake Meyers, especially with, we've been hearing rumors about it, feels like for a couple of years, of Michael Brantley getting some reps at first base. And then if you do end up, carrying a guy like Yainer Diaz, he can have first base as well. So I think Metajevic has a nice bat that you'd like to have off the bench, a guy that can kind of provide some pop real quick. I just don't know if his versatility is going to be enough to carry him in a bench role for the majority of the season.
All right, Jimmy. A lot of people are talking about the pitch clock. I mean, we barely have a handful of games to kind of get an idea of what that's going to mean for hitters at the plate, never mind pitchers on the mound. But I kind of found it interesting, Kyle Tucker's take on the pitch clock and him having just, 8 seconds to kind of get set. It's like, hey, there's not enough time to process what just happened, think
Mm.
about what's coming. And I started thinking about like the give and take. He's already kind of discussing the change there, and never mind the shift, right? Which they've outlawed, and how that could, potentially benefit him, a dead pull hitter, that
Mhm.
kind of a guy. And then I started thinking about the World Baseball Classic. Well, the World Baseball Classic, they're going to be playing these pool games starting March 8th, and that's going to, take away, a good portion of spring. Like, how much of an opportunity do these guys actually have to get settled in, get used to these new rules? And I was thinking about Tucker and Altuve and Luis Garcia. All these guys are playing in the World Baseball Classic, some important Astros. How do you see this whole thing playing out, and what did you make of Tucker's comments specifically?
I think some of the younger guys have seen it a little bit. Obviously, guys like Altuve have never seen the pitch clock. It's been in the minors around a little bit. I think a lot of the guys in the minors just got used to it. It's kind of one of those things that you have to. It's part of the game, and it speeds the game up, and they're going to have to kind of get used to it. I do think it definitely favors the pitchers, the guys that like to work fast, because, like you said, the hitter has only a few seconds to really process what happened, take a deep breath, get right back in the box. Actually, when I was in Fayetteville last year, they had Jeff Bagwell on the broadcast, and he was talking about the same thing, how it really favors the pitchers, because the hitters, I mean, especially in a late game situation, you really want to slow your heart rate, take a couple deep breaths, and you really don't have the time to do that because you're staring at the clock out there that's, counting down your seconds. So I'm interested to see how it's going to play out. You make a great point that, like, this spring is a weird spring to introduce new rules, given the fact that we do have the World Baseball Classic. Ultimately, I think the guys will be okay. Hopefully nothing comes down to where, like, it's a game-changing thing, if it's a ball or a strike here and there. But I do worry about a guy like Altuve. He does take his time. He steps out. He does his thing. He kind of
Yeah.
messes with the dirt and stuff. Kyle Tucker, he was kind of a quick step out, get a little dirt on his hand, get right back in the box, But, I mean, Altuve's been in the major since 2011, and now you're throwing another thing at him. But ultimately, they'll have to get used to it. It's part of the game, and whatever challenges they're going through, the other team's going to be going through as well. So hopefully they'll be all right with it.
Yeah, and I just kind of Altuve's not exactly Nomar Garcia Parra, where he's tweaking his gloves like
Mhm.
35 times. But to me, he's going to be a little bit more interesting to kind of watch in the adjustment than Kyle Tucker. Because what you said about Tucker is absolutely right. It's just, it seemed like it was more the mental aspect for Tucker, that those extra few seconds, ball players are trained. I mean, everything is habitual, and they know that, what I need 20 seconds to kind of process everything and think about what's coming. But it's going to be an interesting follow. Ultimately, I'm kind of with you. They're ball players, and you know what ball players do? They figure stuff out. They're ball players.
And Altuve, let's remember that Altuve, of every guy on the Astros roster, he's a guy that just see ball, hit ball. We talked about
Yeah.
it during the cheating scandal, that he didn't want to know a lot. He
Mhm.
doesn't want to process a bunch of stuff. He's the guy that's wheeling Keeler,
Good point.
where's the ball, where's the hole? I'm going to go find where the hole is, and I'm going to hit the ball there, or I'm going to see the pitch that I want to hit. So, like, Altuve is the last guy, frankly, for me, that I would be worried about as an Astros fan. Kyle Tucker has got all this stuff. And, I'm just going to say this. I saw a lot of whining from Twitter when this stuff rolls out this weekend, and everybody's upset. And they're like, oh my God, I can't think fast enough. You can't think fast enough to watch a baseball game. You need that time for guys you want to see guys scratching their balls and putting dirt on the bat and walking around the mound. I miss all of that fun stuff in baseball. Just, find some YouTube videos of guys doing that and just watch it on a loop for 20 minutes after the game. If that's the stuff that you're missing, it blows me away that we've spent the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years in baseball saying the game's too darn long. And then you hear all these people that I'm like, you guys aren't watching 3 hours and 30 minutes. The ratings have gone down like they're going straight down into the ground. They're coming down like a plane that's about to crash. And everybody's like, I miss games that are 3 hours and 30 minutes long. And you talk about adjustments, Sean, and Jimmy, I'm going to just say this for a second. I think what's going to happen is at some point, the baseball is going to say, okay, we're going to give you a couple of extra seconds. And you know what, Jimmy? You know what's going to happen when they give them a couple extra? They're going to say, oh my God, that seems like so much longer of a time. And that mental adjusting, it reminds me of the quarterback that, comes from college and he goes into the pros. And it's like everything's coming at him so fast. And then after a while, you figure it out. And I think that's what's going to happen. Maybe they're going to say, oh, it's a little bit too quick. We'll give you like 2 extra seconds. And that 2 extra seconds, all of a sudden, that's not going to be such a big deal.
Yeah, maybe not. But, I want to hear your take on that, Jimmy. But I did want to mention, too, you just reminded me of it, Robert, that I think they're allowing 1 30-second, timeout of sorts per plate appearance. So it's, going to come down to like a little bit of strategy on the hitter, like whenever they feel like they emotionally or mentally need that for themselves.
Yeah, I think if I watch a lot of minor league baseball, obviously, and you go out to a game in Sugar Land, and to me, you don't even notice it. The pitch clock's back there, the umpire's resetting it. You sit in the press box, the guy's resetting it, but you don't really notice it. The game's just going, and I think the guys that know it. Rarely do I even remember an automatic ball or strike being called, and if so, it was never something that really affected the game. So I think you're right. The adjustments will be made. They'll eventually get used to it. That what feels like 10 seconds is quick now, like Robert said, will end up being feel like an eternity when they actually get used to it. But yeah, I think it's good. I think I actually really like the idea of the pickoffs. That's another thing that I think is kind of intriguing, right? Because after I'd have to get the exact count right, but I think it's after 2, like your third one. If you don't successfully pick the guy off, you automatically get second. Yeah. And heck, if anything, that feels like more of a drag than sometimes the seconds in between the pitcher, just seeing the guy pick off 6, 7, 8 times in at bat. But no, I think they'll make the adjustments. I don't know if either one of y'all have ever gone down to Sugar Land the last couple of years and watched the games. To me, you don't even notice it. It's back there, but you don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, in person, you're probably right. But that Braves situation the other day with that end of the ball game. Yeah. My only problem is the viewer at home on TV. The view that everybody saw probably on social. I'm looking in every corner, like, where's the pitch clock? Why is this? What's the problem here? And it took a couple of seconds before you realize, and it's like, oh yeah. And I just think, the broadcast, Major League Baseball, they've got to figure out a very easy way, do something like you do in the NBA with a shot clock where it's kind of built into the scoreboard, or the NFL, the play clock, that whole bit. I mean, it's a very simple fix. And I would assume if it's not done by the end of this week, that somebody's doing something wrong, Major League Baseball or these broadcasts. But I agree with you. I didn't like it from a viewership standpoint. And you got to take these early days in spring training to work those kinks out.
Yeah. And one of the things they can do with the view, Jimmy, is just if you put the clock in, all of a sudden fans can start, it gets in a close game where in the postseason fans start going, as the pitcher's on the mound and your team's up at the plate, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. And I always wonder too, like as a hitter, because the pitcher, he's not really looking right at it, but the hitter, it's most of the times it's in, the outfield where you can kind of look at it. And when it's getting down at that 3, 2, 1, you're almost like anticipating the pitch being thrown. So I was wondering how that was going to mess with them. But I was actually just wondering, like the way the game ended, do they look at maybe taking the rule out in the 9th inning when people need that extra time to process or something, or do they extend it in the 9th inning? That'll be interesting to see how they play that, because hopefully we don't have a Major League Baseball game, actual regular season game or postseason for that matter, end on an automatic ball or automatic strike or something like that.
And to those people that were upset about that idea, I just think, okay, are you upset if, the clock runs out on somebody in the NBA at the end of the game because you didn't, put up a shot quick enough? Are you upset that somebody didn't snap the ball quick enough with the clock in the NFL when they're, it's late in the game? I mean, this happens in all the sports. Players have to adjust. There's a clock now.
Now it does, but I mean, I don't know. Think back to the first time you probably weren't around, like any of us were. Like when the NBA first instituted the shot clock. I mean, the first guy that failed to get a shot up, within the shot clock was probably like, what? Are you kidding me? Like who knows what that would have meant or what that did mean at that point in time of a game or whatever. Like who knows? I mean, baseball's a little bit different. It's very. It's very old school, this, Robert.
And that's what I was going to say. I think a lot of people are hooked on the tradition of, and you always hear this, in basketball, there's a clock. The clock will run out, and in football, the clock will run out. In baseball, there's no clock. You could be behind, 20-1 in the 9th inning, and the game's not over because the time will never end. And not that this will stop the time. It's just a pitch clock. But I think people just start seeing those clocks come in, and And a lot of the traditionalists are kind of like, oh, this is messing the game up. But you're going to get exposed to it now. But for anyone that's watched minor league baseball, to me, it's just part of it. And it's not something you even really think about. And I think once the pitchers start getting used to it too, they'll start working faster. And clearly it's made the games go by pretty quick. I mean, I think the longest spring training game of the three so far is like 2 hours and 19 minutes or something like that. It's been going by pretty quick.
Yeah. And if you're an old school fan, like I keep saying, if you're an old school fan, 30 or 40 years ago, this is how long the games would last, guys. Just a heads up on that. Go watch a game from 30 or 40 years ago. We'll go watch a game from 50 years ago. There's networks, there's YouTube videos. It's out there. Hey, Jimmy, if anybody isn't subscribed to the Astros Future podcast, I'm going to remind them, go listen to Jimmy and Kenny Van Dorn's interviews with great interview with Spencer Arrighetti this past week, Colin Price, JP Frank. You got Justin Durden and some of the top prospects all these last couple of months up on your feed. And anything else you want to plug with Astros Future?
Yeah, we're actually going to have Will Wagner on the podcast. So Billy Wagner's son, which I know everyone refers to, Billy Wagner's son, just like with JC Correa. I kind of feel bad for him sometimes. So we'll probably try to avoid some of that. I talked to him last year in Corpus Christi, and I had to include some of that of his time, what he remembered from his dad being in the major leagues and the advice he gave him. But yeah, we're going to have him on the podcast probably on Wednesday. So we'll probably be posting it Thursday. But yeah, right now we're just me and Kenny are just looking at the guys in spring training. We'll be giving weekly updates on the prospects, and that's pretty much it.
Hey, man, I always appreciate having you. Thanks so much for doing this.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Great stuff, Shaun.
Yeah, always good to talk some ball. And, that was my first time ever talking with Jimmy. And I would love to have him on more this spring training and even the regular season. I love talking ball with you, man, but it's always good to get a different perspective. And, to be honest with you, somebody that really has – eyes on the Astros farm system and the prospects. I really enjoyed his analysis on some of the guys that, maybe we should be getting excited about this spring and in the future as well.
Man, baseball fans are such whiny babies. I'm just couldn't believe it.
We are what we are, and you're one of us too. You've got your quirks about you when it comes to the game. Change in baseball, it's something that for years and for literally generations, you haven't had to adapt to. You haven't had to get used to anything. It is what it is. And that was a beautiful thing. It was nice. But, if it's the DH, really, that's been the only significant thing. I don't know what it is besides, now it's bigger bases and you can't shift. And there's a pitch clock and a hit clock and all this stuff. It's like, this has really been the most significant change in my game, the game that I'm absolutely in love with, that I can't believe I'm surprised myself. Maybe it's my age of being 40 now that I don't know. I have enough wisdom or just logic in me that it doesn't bother me. It's cool. I can dig a baseball game, in the middle of a summer that's ending after 2 hours and 30 minutes versus 3.5 hours.
Yeah. I just want to remind Astros fans, about 11 or 12 years ago, you guys were really whining that we had to go over to the American League, and I missed the Cardinals and
I was
playing. And playing the Pirates and the Cubs. And I'm like, are you missing beating up the Yankees every year? Are you, I mean, it's fun to be in the American League and face the Yankees and the Red Sox. It's fun to, by the way, get rid of the stupid pitcher hitting. I mean, everybody was whining about that. And guess what? It's kind of fun to have Yordan Alvarez in the lineup instead of, having to watch Wandy Rodriguez, hit the, and he was good. He was one of the good ones, but like Wandy was hitting baseballs instead of Yordan Alvarez. What a difference that makes.
That's a fun thing to revisit, to be honest with you, because I have to imagine I was not in the minority, when that change was made. What was that, 2011, 2012, something like that? The intrigue about it was, hey, you get to go to Boston, you get to go to New York, see Yankee Stadium and Fenway Park, and some of these more historical ballparks and things like that, and just the allure of playing teams that you wouldn't see, but maybe once every couple of 3-4 years, who knows, in interleague play. But it's been a beautiful thing. Not only have you gotten to play those teams, you've gotten to beat the teams, the best teams, the Yankees, the Red Sox, those teams that were always there, and you've won a couple World Series. It's an interesting thing to revisit, really, because everything that people probably despised about that idea, you love about it now, the DH included.
I loved it all. I also love the fact that because I was from Houston, but I spent a long time in Missouri, and I've got a lot of Cardinal friends that are, or however you say that, Cardinal fan friends. Yeah, that's right. But I had so many guys that I knew were Cardinals fans, and I knew their rival was the Cubs. It wasn't the Astros. I mean, we pretended like it was because for a couple of years they were going up against each other all the time, and they were the two of the better teams. But in the end, the Cardinals and Cubs rivalry goes back 130, 140 years or whatever. And it wasn't the Astros. And by the way, as a Houston fan, I'm like, hey, it's pretty cool to have the Rangers in the division because I can work up a lot more hatred for the Rangers and the Dallas people than I can for Pittsburgh or, whoever garbage team that was in the NL Central outside of the Cardinals.
Yeah, well, the good old silver boot still doesn't mean squat because, the Rangers have stunk ever since the Astros, got into the AL West. And,
but when they got to the AL West, let's not forget that the Rangers just came off a couple of World Series.
Yeah, they were pretty good, but nothing since. And I'm enjoying that. I like that. I like the tension that's built up now between the Astros and the Mariners. I love being in the same division and getting a chance to see one of the most polarizing and enjoyable players to watch, 18, 19, 20 times a season in Shohei Ohtani. And if he's healthy, Mike Trout as well to boot. There's just so much to love about the Astros' current situation. I tell you this all the time, man. We're 6 years into this, and, I could even go beyond, maybe 7, 8 years when you really kind of started to see the fruits of their labors kind of come to fruition, with the tearing it down and building it back up since 2015 when they did something against the Royals in the postseason they weren't supposed to do. And that's, nearly pushed them to the brink. But it's a beautiful thing. Just don't take it for granted. I know it's hard not to, but man, really, I just try to enjoy every moment of this era of Astros baseball. It's fantastic. And, to be honest with you, we may never see anything like this again in our lifetime. So just trying to live it up, man.
All right. We are going to talk a little Texans now, and I got a surprise because in the next 24 hours or so, going to have a really interesting interview with the guy that covers CJ Stroud for Ohio State. Looking forward to that. Keep an eye out for that on your podcast feed or on your YouTube channel, on our YouTube channel, that is. But Shaun, boy, there was some rumors, some draft rumors. Any of them catch your ear? I'm kind of numb to it since we're several thousand rumors away from the draft in a couple of months.
I heard a couple today. Somebody reported that, hey, the Texans, are going to go after Jimmy Garoppolo now. And then specifically with the draft, somebody, can't remember who. I mean, there's so many of these guys from CBSSports.com. One of them in their mock drafts had the Texans actually trading up to the number 1 spot with the Bears and taking CJ Stroud. Also heard another rumor, via a report that had the Texans possibly trading back to number 7 with their number 2 pick. I think that's the Raiders. And maybe doing the same thing with their 12th overall pick, maybe nabbing a quarterback at 7, taking a flyer on Anthony Richardson. I mean, all of these crazy things. The ask, which, the 2 to the 7, the Texans getting, I think, 4 picks in this report or whatever, or this mock. And that was, eyebrow raising, but there's just so much, dude. And I think I wanted to tell you this the other day. I don't think I actually did. I really want to go. What's happening is people are just throwing crap up against the wall and seeing if it sticks. I mean, we're at that point like we are every single NFL draft, but particularly when your team has a top 3, maybe even a top 5 pick, they do this to themselves where you come up with any crazy idea. It doesn't matter what it is. Every possible scenario is going to make its way to a mock draft 7.0 at some point. And that's where we are right now. And I think we're only on 2.0s right now with a lot of these things. It's just crazy. I don't want to listen to any so-called experts, talking heads, tell me what they think is going to happen, what should happen. 2-12, I will say this, in my opinion, means nothing. 2-12 for the Texans probably doesn't end up being 2-12. It's probably going to be 2-18 or 2-7. Who knows? Things are going to move around. That's all I know because, one, Caserio likes to do it. He's willing to do it. And it's just the NFL. Teams do it.
Isn't Caserio just putting out these rumors himself to try to throw everybody off balance?
Could be. I mean, who knows? That's the thing. That's why I hate talking about all of this stuff. Like with any real vindication, like I can't be passionate about anything other than the fact that this is all so silly and just hypothetical. I'm excited for the draft, but I mean, we can only pour over all of this junk, so many times before you even get to the new league year starting, which is coming up May 15th, I believe, when free agency kicks in. And, like I'd said on our show last week, I'm really looking forward to that in that window between March 15th and April 27th ahead of the NFL draft, because free agency happens. And then we're really able to have a more intelligent type of a conversation in terms of what our team's going to do for an NFL draft.
Shaun, I'm interested to see how many coaches get fired late in this season, potentially before the Rockets fire their coach, which we know is going to happen. And then those coaches get fired and other coaches come in that are great potential coaches for the Rockets, like Quinn Snyder. Is
Heard that one.
Rafael Stone going to drop the ball on it? That's my biggest concern with you're waiting forever and ever. You were leaving Silas in place because he gives you the best chance at the best odds of the first overall pick. But if you blow a coach and then you don't get the first overall pick or the second overall pick, which they're counting on, then where are you?
I don't know. I would say, yeah, you're right. Steven Silas gave you the best chance to, get that number 1 overall pick. But so did Rafael Stone. He's the architect of this, and it was his decision. Tillman trusts him, or at least trusted him going into this year. I still think that's not a given. And, at season's end, the way that you just phrased that, okay, what does Rafael Stone do? Who does he go out and navigate? I don't know that Tillman's going to allow him to do that. I mean, I think I know I'd like to see the Rockets be in search of a general manager and an entirely new coaching staff. I don't know if Tillman's going to do that. I hope he does. He's so hard to get a grasp on. I mean, he's talking Rockets, with Frank Billingsley drunk at Mardi Gras. That's Tillman Fertitta. That's our owner of the Rockets. And
Stone keeps saying he's got a plan.
They all have a plan. They all have they all have a plan. They all have to sell that to their owners. Like, you know what, your plan, if it lands you Victor Wembanyama, all right, cool. Like, Rocket fans will go back like the sheep that they are, like we are as sport fans, and we're gonna love it. But you know what, your plan for the most part has sucked. It's taken too darn long. And, you had an opportunity to go out and get some veterans this season to show these young guys how to play. I know that's maybe not part of the plan because you really wanted to stink it up and get Victor, and have this terrible coaching staff and create all of this drama and just inflammation within the organization. Like, I guess I get it. I get it. I don't appreciate the way that they've gone about it over the course of the last 3 years. It's just been a long road, Robert.
It's going to be really sad when they do not get the first or second pick. Because let me tell you, what's going to happen, very simple, is they're going to be a bad lottery team with no draft choice. By the way, this next draft's kind of sucky anyway. So maybe we're going to make too big a deal about that. But they're going to be a bad lottery team if they do not get these one or two guys. Because who will want to come to this guard? I mean, they think James Harden's going to want to come here after he's just gone to the conference finals, maybe in Philadelphia. If he's going to want to go from Joel Embiid to the Rockets, who are drafting 4 and 5, in the draft, and they've got really not a whole lot to show right now because you got such terrible coaching that's done terrible development. You got nothing to show for your last 2 drafts.
Yeah. And look, I know there's rumblings until there's not, and that's why I just can't wait to get this season over with and to have finality with this coaching staff and really hopefully with this front office, like whatever the decision is. If Tillman trusts in Rafael Stone's plan, then, so be it. But we better start to see some progress this upcoming offseason and regular season with a new staff. But I need to see some movement forward. I need to see this plan in action because it's easy to tear stuff down sometimes.
We're going to see what the plan is basically in the next few months. And that should be really interesting to see what happens if they do not get those top 2 lottery picks, because it all crumbles at that point. But Shaun, it's February the 27th as you and I are talking. That means we're 2 days away from March and the Cougars and March Madness. How you feeling?
Yeah. To be honest with you, I mean, obviously I'm biased. I went to school there. I cover them on the regular for Sports Radio 610. And it's hard not to just be biased to some degree because you're around these guys, with some regularity. But I've been paying really close attention over the course of the last month and just listening to what guys are saying, like Jamal Shed and Jarris Walker, and just kind of getting the vibe, the feel of the team, and what the message has been from this coaching staff. And look, you could kind of dumb it down and say, hey, look, a lot of this at the end of the day, it is just coach talk. But I think the best quote in this city for my money is Kelvin Sampson. And I say that because there is substance there. Sure, the guy goes on these tangents and rambles and on and on and on. And you can ask a direct question and he'll tell you anything. But it's just how his mind works, man. And I'm listening to him and he's talking about, look, there's not one great team in this league right now. There's not one great team in the country right now. We're really good, but we're not great. Could we get there? Sure. But we'll have to see. We need to be a better defensive team. We need to be a better rebounding team. We need to be more efficient offensively. All of these things that you hear every coach for every team in every league at every level say. I've seen marked improvement over the course of the last month from this squad in every single facet of their game. And just over the course of the last 2 seasons, this is right around the time where you start to see this squad come together. Sometimes they're healthy, Robert, and sometimes they're not. And you know what? This year, knock on wood, I mean, it looks like it's all kind of coming together, and they really look like a force to be reckoned with. And I know people nationally, while they've been giving them their props, they're going to say, on the other side of their mouth, well, you know what? There's not the Blue Bloods. There's no Duke. There's no Kentucky. There's no, this, that, or the other team, whatever. It's like, you know what? That's fine. But, Villanova, they're pretty good. Kansas, pretty good. Purdue's pretty good. Like Alabama, they're pretty good. Maybe not with Brandon Miller, and who knows how that thing shakes out. But, I mean, there's some really good teams in the country. And you know what? The Cougars have been number 1 3 different times this season. And you're going to have to knock them out. So I really like the vibe. I like what they're saying. And most importantly, I like what I'm seeing with them. I'm very excited for the conference tournament and really excited for the Memphis game, the final game of the season coming up March 5th, because Memphis wasn't at their full arsenal, a week and a half ago when they played the Cougs and they beat them, by 8 points. I think it was a wire-to-wire win. They should be fully healthy March 5th. And so I think it's going to be a really good test going into the conference tournament for the Cougars. And so it kind of really starts there for me.
The other juggernaut in Houston right now, baby, is those Roughnecks, still undefeated. Wade Phillips,
Yeah.
His defense, 3 turnovers, 5 sacks, 11 total sacks in their first 2 games. Yeah, sacks. We don't see those all that often over at NRG Stadium. 23-14 over the Arlington Renegades. Shaun loved it. Loved it.
Yeah. You know what I loved even more is like, I don't know. I think it was Phillips that took the video, or maybe it was like a team videographer or whatever, but the celebrations in the locker room afterwards, everybody dancing and having a good time, playing the music. It was like Club Astros in there. I mean, it's a good vibe. It's a good product. There's no question that people like it. It's just, hopefully The Rock and his ownership group, they can figure some stuff out and keep this around and help it survive and generate some revenue to where it lasts for more than a year or two. Because I think this is a very cool thing. You get to see so much in the XFL that is lacking in a lot of things in the NFL. And you know what? There's some pretty cool ideas that the XFL does in terms of like different options than an onside kick, going forward on a 4th and 15 and, some gimmicky things like that maybe the NFL considers one day. So, but I'm happy for Wade because the dude, this is his drive. It's almost like he just loves this so much. Like he's kind of like everybody's dream. He's living everybody's dream. He's literally doing something that he absolutely loves and is still really good at the age of 71 or however old he is. It doesn't even matter because he's looked the same for 20 years, in my opinion. It's just really cool to see him doing this and being successful.
Yeah. And in a way, I think Wade is trying to say, look, we've made age a big deal in the NFL. Everybody's hiring younger and younger coaches. but man, I can still do this. I'm still relevant. Marv Levy was going to Super Bowl after Super Bowl with the Bills when he was in his 70s.
I can still appeal to the young player. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Wade definitely appeals to him just like his daddy did. And it's so fun. And you talk about these rules, and you got to remember that a lot of the rules that we see in the NBA, including the 3-point shot, are thanks to the ABA. These other renegade leagues, oftentimes what they do is they end up, grabbing rules from those renegade leagues and incorporating them into the big leagues, the NFL, the NBA, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, have you seen one thing in the XFL that you absolutely need to see in the NFL?
How about something this is not even a new rule. This is just real simple. Why can they do instant replay in about a minute or 2 minutes? In the NFL, it seems like I can go to the bathroom and go make something to eat before they can figure out what happened on an easy play that we all saw within like 30 seconds what happened.
That's a fair question. And I won't answer it, but I'll ask you another question. Like in the NFL, it goes to a headquarters. I'm assuming it's in New York, right? So maybe that takes a little extra time, and they're going to be really thorough because it's the NFL. But maybe the XFL one, does it go to any headquarters? Are the referees doing it themselves? They're just taking an extra look at it on the side, and maybe they're not poring over it 25 times in a row, looking at it in super extra slow-mo. Maybe it's just like they're looking at it real quick and boom, making a call.
And why can the XFL, they could put the mics on the guys so we can hear what's going on. So if you're going to take some time, let's hear what they have to say. Everything with the NFL, it's the secret, undercover FBI type thing. We can't show you anything in the NFL. We can't talk to people on the side. We can't hear from people on the sideline. We can't use mic audio during games of what the players are saying to each other, what the coaches are saying to each other, because God forbid they're giving away the top secret. Even the NBA has included they include the mic stuff, and they edit it. They take out the stuff that maybe could give something away, but at least you hear some of the sounds of the game. But yeah, the other thing I would say for sure, rule changes is there's nothing more boring in the NFL than the stupid extra point. This 1, 2, and 3 points after you score a touchdown, this is an easy fix. And this is the NFL. I think it's just being stubborn that they haven't changed from this. Nobody wants to see an extra point.
Yeah, I mean, even despite making it harder, more difficult, taking it from the chip shot that it used to be, was it 20 yards, and they moved it back to 32 or whatever it is. I don't even remember what it originally was. It was just really easy. I mean, like, guys miss it every now and again, but it's not a thing, and at least unless you're a Dallas Cowboys kicker. But I think it's kind of like the same thing, with baseball fans. For football fans, there are some things that are just uneasy that they don't want to stray away from within the game because it has been that way for so long. And being a baseball guy, I'm going to not be a hypocrite here and say, you know what, I understand that, because I do. If you can make the game better, if you can make the game more exciting, more dramatic, add action to it, all of the things that at the end of the day, Major League Baseball says that it wants, but has seemingly not really gone out and done outside of juicing baseballs and turning a blind eye to steroid use within its game. They haven't done that. The NFL could do that with the actual game itself. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like I was saying, instead of an onside kick, and you could eliminate, there being just like a 1% or a 5% chance that, that team recovers. Let's go with a 4th and 15, institute something like that. I think that would be a little more interesting, intriguing, exciting for the NFL to do. So it's something like that, maybe different rules with the kickoff, which I know has been a concern because of health and safety in recent years. But I think there are things, but it's important ultimately for these leagues, USFL, XFL, whatever it is, this spring league, to stick around and survive for more than 1 or 2 or 3 years. There has to be a really large sample size where the NFL could use, instead of employing its own product as kind of like a test. Well, they've got the XFL, they've got a USFL league, to where they can institute it there, look at it, study it, and then decide whether or not they want to employ it.
I'll still enjoy watching what the XFL is doing, because I think they've got some good stuff, and hey, we got a team that's fun to root for, and that's great. Sean, let's do it again on Thursday, man. See you in a little bit.
Yes, sir. Enjoyed it.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.